So to hop into it, our first speaker tonight is Corey Brown. Corey Brown is a colleague of mine at TheScore. He's the lead product manager for TheScore. He's been at TheScore for 5 years. Previously at Deloitte, he's an exceptional product manager with an incredible balance between practical, getting stuff done and meticulous process that helps us do it right. He's worked on a number of really great things at TheScore, including a full redesign of the app, the betting app that I now work on, and now he's leading a team of product managers on TheScore. He also has a really awesome craft beer and some of which might be highlighted behind him. I'm not sure if you can see it. There we go. Welcome, Corey. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Just enjoying the nice weather and excited.
Long time no talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't do that all day every day. So yeah. Good. All right, cool. So let's talk about something that you've launched and how did you, just starting from the beginning, how did you decide that that was the thing that you were going to do?
Yeah, let's jump into what we launched last year, and you actually helped us launch it with TheScore Bet. It was basically almost an idea from the start of TheScore back in early 2000s when we started launching a television station, and they wanted to revolutionize, and they saw the opportunity that a lot of people watch sports to actually bet on it. And with the US having PAPSA, which is a basically set of legislation that stopped people from betting, the opportunity in 2008 to have that repealed and for individual states to open up jurisdictions to allow for betting, we basically identified this opportunity in the market that aligns directly with what we see with our users. And did we lose video?
For me, anyway, but you sound great, so keep going.
Okay, I'll keep going. And so we identified a market opportunity that basically was all these new online bet opportunities came per state. So New Jersey was one of the first ones that was very liberal with their regulations, and we identified the opportunity. It aligned especially with our users' quants. So we were seeing a lot of users using our app specifically to look up betting markets, to follow scores, to see how their bets were doing, often on offshore illegal sites. But given the market opportunity in the States to be regulatory and actually drive revenue, which currently we're an ad unit based product, it allowed us to actually open up that opportunity, and we kind of dove headfirst in. So beginning last year, we started building a native app, which was actually not out on the market yet. We were compared with other web-based applications, and we wanted to kind of rock the boat and bring the best user experience to users for sports betting. So using both the market opportunity for, there's upwards of tens of billions of dollars in a given year in sports betting, plus the fact that we were seeing our user behavior interested in this type of content, we thought, hey, why not jump? And everybody, including our stakeholders, were game to go. So, those were the two big driving forces getting us into that product.
So yeah, obviously the betting product, I'm not sure how many of the people who are watching this would really be familiar with it because it is only live in New Jersey right now, but we have a global audience, so maybe. But in terms of what went into that, when you're evaluating, are there frameworks that you're using to evaluate impact versus effort, or what went into that?
So with of effort to build a full app. So let's think about maybe individual features in the app as we prioritize those individual elements that we know solve user problems, but we don't know if they're large enough to put in that much effort out of the gate to solve all of the problems that we need to solve. So one of the quick tools that we often use when we're trying to decide on what to do is around, is the actual change that we want to make or the implementation that we want to do reversible? Is it something that, is it easier? And we often find it's easier to learn when the users use the product and actually give us feedback through their actual behavior versus trying to ask them and tease out insights. So we often ask ourselves, hey, is this feature reversible, irreversible? Is it high impact, low impact? And using some sort of 2x2 matrix there, we can often make quick decisions on individual features. The other element that we often employ is some sort of RICE framework that I think a lot of people are familiar with when we're deciding on what we need to do in a specific product or a feature. RICE, reach. It's basically a formula that you might have seen out there, and a lot of people construct their own formulas, but we use reach, impact, or confidence in the actual estimate of what that impact would be, and then obviously the effort that's going to be required to build it. So if something's low impact, high effort, you kind of push it off to the side until you can validate more what kind of problems. So those two big frameworks are the two that we utilize a lot. So yeah, I think those are the two big ones that we do to try to prioritize our roadmap. And then as we were building Bet specifically, we use those frameworks to determine, what features should be in that MVP launch, what things are going to make sure users can use this product, get value out of it right out of the gate, and see that aha moment, versus something that maybe we can spend, a month building and nobody's really interested in it. So those are the things that we wanted to make sure we're all there so that the product was successful on launch.
And so, speaking of launch, what types of things do you measure that when, as Matt framed it at the beginning, when an executive stakeholder comes back to you to say, how's it doing? Right. What are the types of things that you're looking at to measure, and how could someone, apply those to a product they're working on?
I think what's interesting with TheScore is we are very seasonal. So often we evaluate, for example, say we launch a feature for NFL, which usually happens between fall and winter in a given year. We usually like to look at year-over-year metrics to determine the success of a feature, because often the behavior of users takes a little bit of uptick to really get into the comfortable nature of it. And so what I generally employ when I look at a feature, if somebody asks me is it successful, on a daily basis, I'll look at, are bugs coming back? Is there feedback positive or negative? Are there any is our tracking in place? Are any of those large red flags that we're going the wrong direction coming out? If not, then maybe on a weekly basis, we'll do a sanity check just to make sure that the feature's being engaged with, the feature's being used, and that we haven't totally missed our mark. And then really when it comes down to analyzing if a feature was successful, it's really about year-over-year metrics that we look at, because with the NFL spike, we often see a lot of usage at that point. And then coming back the next year, a lot of the habits have been formed that way. And then therefore the users come back and start using those features again. So for something like Bet, for example, we're hoping that when we get back into this new year, all the cachet that we've built with our user base during NFL 2020 comes back in 2021, assuming that we get sports back in 2020. And so we'll look at that year-over-year metrics, and we'll determine if we've been successful in all the changes and the deltas we've put into our product over that course of the year, improved it or decreased it. And I understand that's a lagging indicator, but really it's really hard in a sports calendar to try to evaluate on a day-by-day basis how successful a feature is.
Yeah, it's funny. We talk about this a lot, but if you're looking at even at a single month, if a month has an extra Sunday in it during football season, it can make all of the difference in terms of how good your month looked, which is a really interesting thing that, I've never encountered in my career in terms of measurement. So yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, but the difference between a one NFL Sunday in a calendar month or not could be the difference of, a couple 100,000 MAU. It'll definitely impact, millions of app launches for us. It's very tricky to kind of navigate those waters. So often when we're presenting these metrics, you want to look into, what are the driving forces behind them. So when we do see large variances in month data or even weekly data, we'll often go back and we have an internal analytics team which does a great job at really digging into the reasons why. And to be honest, 4 times out of 5, it's usually some sort of calendar related reason, but we also end up sometimes hitting on a pot of gold Similar, so just to give an example, public chat was launched on matchup pages 2019, and really it took about a year to get up to speed for people to really realize the value in the community and for it to really solve.
And this is just explain what public chat is. It's like on a matchup page where you're looking at the box score. There's a stream of commentary happening next to it. It's a really unique community in sports. It's hard to find that stuff outside of like Reddit or Twitter. But yeah, that's what public chat is.
And it's a passionate community, right? People have hot takes left, right. People are going there to look for betting advice, which is awesome, and it kind of plays into our overall pushing of our brand as both a sports media and gaming company. And it kind of reinforces the direction we're in, the vision that we feel that we can drive in the US. But yeah, and then a year later, we saw an increase of like close to 20% increase of app launches. And when we really dug in deep to it, we realized that it was the users that were coming into community, learning how to use it, and back again, app launches to see what that next person said. And we didn't know at the time that was going to cause that impact, but it really did take quite a while for that impact to be realized. And it's something to just make sure you realize to be patient. Sometimes these impacts do take some time, and that the users change a version and sort of what they're not used to. Sometimes you might get a negative signal off the gate, but give it time and understand why the users don't like it. Is it just because it's different, or is it actually because it's not solving anything for them?
You mentioned, measurement. Like, what are some of the tools that you use, like, to physically go in and understand how things are doing?
Yep. So like I said, we have a great in-house analytics team that actually built out a very comprehensive native tracking solution on both our media and bet app. And they have all the data in the world that we could ever want from a granular perspective, anything down to a single button press. We can measure how that's changed over time. Holistically, what is the user doing across sessions? And then they use that for more of the reporting, official performance of our applications and more of those lagging indicators. And then what they've done is we've actually hooked up both apps into Amplitude as well and sent some subset of those tracking events into Amplitude that allows both our product team and our design team, if we're in a meeting and a question comes up around what's the usage of this feature, or how valuable is it, or a bug comes up and we need to determine, how impactful is this bug right now? Where does it need to be prioritized in our backlog and in terms of our sprints? How do we get that done? We go through into Amplitude and are able to determine quickly how useful that feature is. Is it something that 1,000 users are experiencing? Is it something that 100,000 users are experiencing? And we use that to help facilitate where we actually prioritize and get that bug fixed for your users. So a mixture of in-house analytics as well as our Amplitude tracking. And then the other big piece that I don't want to leave out is obviously user feedback. We have a very, very passionate, active community that likes to give us feedback when anything goes wrong. Anything from an NFL game going down to a second-tier English Premier League not showing the correct score. We get feedback on that, and that really helps us identify those issues and gives us the backing to go along with the data, so we're both constant calls for decision making.
Is there anything that you've worked on where the process that you just explained to me didn't work?
Yeah, so there's a lot, but I think that's part of product management. It's all it's learning. We don't view them as failures; we view them as learnings. And so a simple one. So for example, if you open up the app, we have a favorite section where you can favorite your favorite teams, leagues, and get news about those things. And we got feedback from users, from just a handful of users saying, they'd like their favorites feed or their news feed to actually have more control over what type of content, video, third-party articles, in-house articles. And so we said, hey, what would be a great idea is if we provided them with a filter to be able to actually control what they see in their feed. We launched it and nobody used it. The feedback didn't change. We told them about it. It didn't really matter to them. And at the end of the day, we kind of realized that we might have jumped to conclusions a little bit quickly about how we realized that was the solution. And what it might have been more is that the actual users weren't finding the entire content that was being provided to them useful, not necessarily the specific content type. So that was something that just the usage didn't realize itself. So we thought, hey, you know what? We're not going to remove it just yet, which is something that I do think that you need to also look into is feature rot and too much debt. But
like, how do you make that decision though, in terms of like getting rid of something?
I think for me, so for example, we're going through a couple initiatives right now where we're doing full evaluations of certain features. And if it's not meeting a certain threshold of our users or active users, we're cutting it. So for example, there's some modals and some really deep data insights on our matchup pages, but from an engineering build and operational maintenance perspective, it's just not worth the cost there. So we're seeing 0.00 ever clicked on this thing. And yes, that 0.001% is it could be very valuable to them, but for the rest of the audience, they're not getting a lot of value out of it. And for us to make sure that we're focusing our efforts on the most valuable, impactful things to solve the largest problems for users, we start to remove those things. And we're moving forward with a couple things where we're removing ideas and features that we thought would be successful, but weren't. So we'll use analytics, obviously. And then again, we'll go back to customer support and we'll ask, hey, how much have you guys heard about this specific feature? How much have you guys heard complaints or requests for it? And use those two combined to really make a decision on if that's the right decision to remove it or not. But again, it comes back to that reversible, irreversible, because if we remove it and the audience just comes at us with, hey, why the heck did you remove that? Then we know we can add it back. We haven't made a finalized decision there. So again, listening to your audience and trying to make the best decisions for both your engineering team and your users, it's a delicate balance across all those dimensions.
Well, yeah, I guess like that's why, when you see that like initial product Venn diagram, you've got business, technology, users, and we sit right in the middle. So it's always balancing that. And as a product manager, especially to kill something that you created, they're your babies, and then you have to get rid of them, which is awful and is sad, but is sometimes necessary when you're sitting in the middle of that Venn diagram.
It's as long as it's about turning the coin there to make sure that you're realizing not that you're killing your baby, so to speak, as terrible as that.
Yeah, that was a terrible analogy. I'm sorry.
That your baby's going off to college and it's no longer in your purview, but what did you learn? And just making sure that you apply those learnings going forward. We tried this one thing based on user feedback. So the next time a feature comes up that is solely rooted in user feedback, you now have the learning to go, hey, wait a second, we made this mistake previously. Let's go dig into another dimension of that feature, whether it's how much business value will this have? How much does this actually push technology innovation? Does the data align to it? A lot of other different dimensions that you can then apply and then make that decision that's a little bit more well-rounded versus just on that singular dimension of a need.
This is awesome. That 15 minutes flew by.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much, Corey. We do this every day. It's always fun. But we'll see you back in a bit for the panel. Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.